Good evening, all, and welcome back to Dark Fears. Tonight, we journey into the frozen heart and forgotten corners of the Midwest, through isolated small towns, endless wilderness, and places where help does not reach, to uncover 8 of the most disturbing and terrifying small-town horror stories ever recorded. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Dark Fears for daily horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Now, let us step into the shadows of the Midwest, where civilization ends and terror begins. My name is Ethan Moore, and this happened when I was 26 years old. I grew up in Chicago, surrounded by noise, traffic, and people who never looked twice at each other. So when my aunt passed away and left me her old farmhouse in a tiny Midwest town called Briar Hollow, I saw it as an escape, a quiet reset, somewhere I could breathe. Briar Hollow didn't even show up properly on Google Maps. One blinking traffic light, a diner, a grain silo, maybe 600 people, if that. Everyone waved when I drove in, smiling a little too long, like they already knew me. The house sat on the edge of town, surrounded by cornfields that stretched farther than the eye could see. At night, the wind moved through the stalks like something alive, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. The first night, I slept peacefully. The second night, I heard someone knocking on my bedroom wall. From the inside, I woke up gasping, heart racing, convinced I'd dreamed it. The wall was solid wood, no doors, no crawl space, just my aunt's old floral wallpaper peeling at the corners. Still, I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, I went into town to introduce myself properly. The diner was called Martha's Place, and every single person inside went quiet when I walked in. Forks paused midair. Coffee cups froze halfway to lips. Martha herself smiled wide and said, "You're staying at Evelyn's house, aren't you?" I hadn't told anyone my aunt's name. I laughed it off, but the unease stuck to me like humidity. Every person asked the same question before anything else. "How long are you staying?" When I said I wasn't sure, their smiles faltered. Just for a second. As I drove back, I noticed something strange. Every road sign pointing out of Briar Hollow was scratched over, like someone didn't want you to remember how to leave. That afternoon, I tried to leave. I'm not exaggerating when I say I drove for nearly 40 minutes without seeing anything familiar. The cornfields never ended. The road never curved. No exits, no intersections. Just a straight ribbon of asphalt cutting through yellow-green stalks that brushed against my car like reaching fingers. According to my GPS, I should have hit the highway in 10 minutes. Instead, I passed the same rusted mailbox 3 times. Each time, the name E. Moore was carved into its side, deeper with every pass, as if something was correcting a mistake. The radio crackled on its own, switching to a low hum beneath static, and for just a moment, I thought I heard breathing under the sound. When I finally turned around, the town appeared instantly, like it had been waiting just out of sight. That night, I found muddy footprints circling my bed. They stopped inches from my face. I confronted the neighbors the next morning. An older man named Caleb, who lived across the road, finally spoke when I asked about the roads. His hands shook as he tightened a fence wire that didn't need fixing. "Briar Hollow doesn't like being abandoned," he said quietly. I laughed, too loudly, asking what that was supposed to mean. Caleb looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was deciding whether I deserved honesty. People who leave don't come back the same. Most don't come back at all. He told me my Aunt Evelyn had tried to sell the house years ago. Every buyer vanished before closing, One was found days later, wandering barefoot in the fields, repeating a single sentence until his throat bled. It needs witnesses. That night, the knocking returned, stronger, faster, moving from the walls to beneath the floorboards. Something was learning the shape of my house. Sleep became impossible after that. Every night, something moved through the house. Not loudly, never crashing or banging, but deliberately, like it was learning where everything belonged. Cabinets opened and closed, chairs shifted positions. Once, I woke to find my bedroom door standing open, even though I locked it every night without fail. The worst part was the smell. Damp soil, old rain, rotting leaves. It seeped up from beneath the floorboards, filling my lungs until breathing felt like drowning. When I pulled back a loose plank near the bed, I found fresh dirt packed tightly underneath, as if someone had been digging upward. I went back to Martha's place, desperate, asking if anyone knew how to get out for good. The diner fell silent again, but this time their expressions weren't curious. They were afraid. Martha leaned close and whispered, "The town chooses who stays. It always replaces what it loses." That night, the knocking formed a rhythm. It matched my heartbeat. I finally broke into the cellar. My aunt had always kept it locked, and now I understood why. The air down there was thick and wet, clinging to my skin. The walls weren't stone like I expected. They were packed earth, pressed smooth by human hands. Carved into them were names, dozens, hundreds. Some were shallow scratches. Others were deeply gouged, desperate, uneven. I saw my aunt's name halfway down the wall, letters warped like she'd been crying when she carved them. And then I saw mine, fresh, clean, perfectly spaced. At the center of the cellar floor was a wide pit, covered by loose boards. Beneath them, something shifted, slow and heavy, breathing through the soil like a buried lung. I understood then. Briar Hollow wasn't haunted. It was hungry, and it didn't want me to leave. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was over. I packed my car, determined to leave before dawn. Every street sign outside pointed straight into town. No exits, no highways, just Briar Hollow's cornfield stretching endlessly. I drove anyway, hoping the horizon would break. But every mile led me back to the same diner, the same blinking traffic light, the same faces frozen in polite attention. They didn't speak. They didn't move. Only their eyes followed me, heavy with something unspoken. Desperate, I shouted, "What do you want from me?" The silence was crushing. Then Martha spoke softly, from nowhere. "We need witnesses," she said. "The town, it doesn't let go of what it once remembered." That night, I understood fully. Briar Hollow wasn't just a town. It was a trap, a living entity that demanded attention. Leaving wasn't enough. You had to obey its rules, follow its rituals, or vanish like those before me. And the knocking from inside the walls, it wasn't stopping. It was beckoning. I decided to confront the cellar once more. If the town wanted witnesses, I would give it what it demanded, on my own terms. Armed with a flashlight and trembling hands, I descended into the earthy pit. The carved names glistened slightly, as though wet, as if breathing in the dim light. The pit shivered. Something beneath it shifted, moving with purpose. I remembered every story Martha and Caleb had hinted at. The disappeared, the wandering, the lost souls still scratching their names in dirt walls. I pressed my hands to the earth and spoke aloud. "I see you. I hear you. I remember." For the first time, the house went silent. The knocking stopped. The smell receded. And yet, I couldn't leave. My car refused to start. Every attempt to escape was met by an invisible force, pushing me back into the heart of town. I realized then, Briar Hollow didn't just want witnesses. It wanted acknowledgement, acceptance, a pact sealed by fear, days blurred together. The townspeople stopped speaking entirely, but their presence was constant. Every morning, I'd find small, inexplicable tokens on my doorstep. Corn husks arranged in patterns, a child's shoe placed on the step, even my aunt's old locket from the dresser. It was as if the town was reminding me of its ownership, marking me as part of its memory. I tried sleeping elsewhere, my car, the diner, even Caleb's barn. But each night, the knocking returned. Not from walls this time, but from the ground itself. The cornfield seemed alive, bending and shifting to block every path. I began talking to it, whispering my name, apologizing, promising to stay. And then, the most terrifying thing happened. I saw a shadow at the edge of the field. Human-like, yet wrong. Too tall, too thin, moving in jerky, unnatural steps. Its eyes glowed faintly like embers. It beckoned me forward, and for the first time, I felt the pull, not of fear, but of an irresistible obligation. I followed it. I had no choice. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs moved on their own, drawn into the dense field. The shadow led me to a clearing I hadn't noticed before, where dozens of shallow graves were arranged in a circle, their surfaces freshly turned. And there, in the center, was my aunt's farmhouse, but decayed, warped, like I was seeing it through someone else's memory. I realized then that Briar Hollow didn't consume bodies. It consumed presence, memory, acknowledgement. Each disappearance became part of the town's consciousness, a permanent witness to its existence. I stumbled backward in terror, but the shadow simply extended a hand. Inside my mind, a voice whispered, "You see? You remember? You belong." The reality of leaving vanished. My car, the roads, even the horizon, they no longer existed. Briar Hollow had claimed me, not physically, but entirely. I was part of its history now, another name etched into the cellar, another witness it would never release. The last thing I heard, before everything went silent, was the soft, insistent knocking from everywhere. My name is Clara Bennett, and this happened when I was 19. I grew up in the suburbs, but I loved escaping to nature whenever I could. So, when a friend invited me to spend a weekend in Cedar Falls, a tiny Midwestern town surrounded by dense forests, I jumped at the chance. The town itself was quiet, sleepy, almost picturesque. But the woods behind it, those were different. Locals never hiked past the first mile. Rumors of disappearances, strange sounds, and inexplicable shadows lingered in hushed conversations at the diner. The first night, we set up camp at the edge of the forest. A fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the trees. The air was thick with humidity, the scent of wet pine and decaying leaves heavy. That's when I first heard it. A soft whisper carried on the wind, impossible to locate. My friends laughed it off, thinking it was the trees, but it wasn't the trees. It was something calling my name. The whispers grew louder after midnight. At first, they were soft, teasing, almost playful, but soon they became coherent, deliberate. "Clara, come deeper. We're waiting." I shook my head, trying to dismiss it. My friends were asleep, unaware of what I was hearing. I peered into the forest, flashlight in hand, but the beam only cut through an impenetrable darkness. The trees seemed to lean toward me, forming corridors I had never noticed before, twisting impossibly, as if the forest itself was alive. I felt drawn forward against my will, as though invisible hands were guiding me. Every step I took into the shadows was met by the soft crunch of leaves behind me, footsteps that weren't mine. Panic gripped me, but my body moved on autopilot, deeper into the woods where no trail existed. When I finally stopped, I was in a small clearing. In the center was a shallow stone circle, etched with strange markings that pulsed faintly in the moonlight. And I wasn't alone. I froze in place, heart hammering. Shadows twisted unnaturally at the edges of the clearing, moving against the moonlight. They weren't human. Too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent at impossible angles. The whispering intensified, surrounding me, circling me like predators. Come closer. Join us. Stay forever. I stumbled backward, trying to retrace my steps, but the forest had shifted. The path I had followed no longer existed. Every tree looked the same, leaves whispering secrets I couldn't understand. The stone circle pulsed faintly, as if alive, calling me back. Then I realized the whispers weren't just calling me. They were telling me things. My deepest fears, my regrets, secrets I had never spoken aloud. Every revelation echoed through the clearing, and I felt exposed, as if the forest itself could see into my soul. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My flashlight flickered and died. Something stepped into the clearing, something waiting for me. Panic surged through me. I turned to run, but the forest was alive. Branches reaching out, snagging at my clothes, tripping me as if they had a mind of their own. The whispering became a chorus, voices overlapping, chanting, urging me to surrender. You belong here. You can't leave. I fell to my knees, gasping, my hands scrabbling at the forest floor. In the dim moonlight, I saw movement between the trees. More figures, all watching, waiting. They didn't speak, but their presence pressed against my mind, heavy and unrelenting. Some instinct made me speak aloud, demanding they leave me alone. The shadows recoiled slightly, hissing in a language I didn't know. I seized the moment and ran blindly, crashing through underbrush, branches slapping my face, roots tripping me, leaves clawing at my skin. Finally, I burst out of the dense forest onto a narrow road leading back to town. I thought I was safe. But as I looked back, I saw a faint glow from the stone circle deep in the trees. And I knew it would wait for me, patient and eternal. I didn't sleep that night. Back at the small motel on the edge of town, every creak of the building, every sigh of the wind through the trees outside sounded like whispers calling my name. I tried to convince myself it was over, that the stone circle and the shadows were just tricks of my imagination, fueled by fear and exhaustion. But the forest had other plans. The next morning, I tried to leave Cedar Falls. Driving along the only road out of town, it twisted and turned unexpectedly, forcing me back toward the outskirts of the woods. The whispering returned, faint at first, then insistent. It wasn't just sound, it was a presence, following my car, moving through the air like liquid. By noon, I realized I couldn't escape simply by leaving. Something wanted acknowledgement, an offering, a promise. And the thought chilled me. Maybe those who disappeared had never left. They had simply answered, willingly or not, to the call of the forest. I decided to return to the woods, desperate for answers. I couldn't keep running. If I wanted to survive, I had to confront whatever was waiting in the clearing. With a flashlight and trembling hands, I ventured back into the dense forest, following the faint memory of the path. The trees seemed to close in around me, bending impossibly, guiding me. The whispering started almost immediately, calling not only my name, but my fears. Lonely, afraid, you cannot hide. Finally, I reached the clearing. The stone circle was unchanged, but the shadows were everywhere now, more numerous, their limbs stretching in unnatural ways, leaning toward me as if tasting the air. My mind screamed to run, but my body froze. Something ancient and intelligent existed here, and it was testing me, probing my mind. I realized then that the forest didn't just want witnesses. It wanted obedience, compliance, recognition. And the cost of refusal, I knew, was far worse than I could imagine. I tried to reason with them. Whispering aloud, I said, "I see you. I hear you. I respect you." The forest reacted. The shadows recoiled slightly, but their presence remained suffocating. The whispers now carried voices, children, adults, even animals, all layered into a chilling chorus, recounting their lives, their fears, their disappearances. I realized the stone circle was more than a marker. It was a recorder, a conduit for the forest to absorb and preserve memories. Every name, every secret whispered to it, became part of its consciousness. Panic clawed at me, but I forced myself to remain calm. One wrong move, and I might join the whispers permanently. I circled the stone ring, tracing each etching with trembling fingers. The shadows observed silently, as if judging whether I belonged. And then, a new voice joined, the oldest, deepest of them all. "Do you accept, Clara?" My stomach dropped. Acceptance meant survival, but at what cost? Rejection meant being forgotten, or worse. I knelt at the center of the circle, hands pressed against the cold stone. "I accept," I whispered, my voice shaking. The shadows stopped moving, the whispers fell silent, and for a moment, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, the stone circle pulsed brighter, a warm glow radiating outward. My body felt heavy, rooted to the spot. Images flashed through my mind, others who had stood here before me, their lives absorbed into the forest's memory, their voices joining the endless whispers. I understood then. Survival in Cedar Falls required more than obedience. It required a promise to remember, to witness, to carry the forest's secrets beyond its borders. When I finally rose, the clearing was empty. No shadows, no whispering. Just the faint glow of moonlight through normal, unremarkable trees. But I knew the truth. Cedar Falls would never release me entirely. I had become a part of it, a guardian of its horrors, silently carrying the whispers wherever I went. The next morning, I tried to convince myself I could leave. I drove out of Cedar Falls, following the winding roads that I had memorized, but the feeling of being watched never left. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow stretching across the road, reminded me that the forest was still alive and waiting. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, I thought I saw faint figures at the tree line. Humanoid shapes, barely visible, lingering, watching, whispering in a language I could no longer understand. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. I realized that leaving physically didn't sever the bond. The forest had embedded itself inside me. Even weeks later, I would hear the whispers in quiet moments, in the shower when I woke at 3 a.m. while walking down empty streets. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't imagination. It was Cedar Falls reminding me that I belonged, reminding me of the promise I had made, embedding its secrets deep inside my mind. The forest waits. It always waits. Even now, I carry the whispers with me. They are subtle, almost imperceptible, threading through my thoughts whenever I am alone. Some days they urge me to return, to walk back into the stone circle, to kneel once more and add my voice to the forest's chorus. Other days, they remind me of what will happen if I forget. A creeping sensation in my bones, a cold pressure on my chest, the feeling of unseen eyes following me everywhere I go. I've come to understand the truth. Cedar Falls doesn't abduct with force. It seduces, coaxes, and binds. It doesn't need to kill to claim you. It waits for your mind, your memory, your acknowledgement. I warn anyone who ventures near those woods. Respect them, acknowledge them, and never wander alone. Because once you hear the whispers, once the forest chooses you, there's no escaping. You are part of Cedar Falls forever. Its memory, its witness, its servant. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear it, calling my name softly, waiting for me to return. My name is Jacob Turner, and this happened when I was 24. I had always loved fishing. So when I heard about Black Oak Lake, a remote body of water in the Midwest surrounded by dense forests, I decided to take a weekend trip. The lake had a reputation among locals: strange drownings, unexplained boat disappearances, and the occasional missing hiker. But I laughed them off. Superstitions, I told myself. I arrived late Friday afternoon, parking my old pickup at the edge of the forest. Mist hovered over the water, curling like smoke. The air was unnaturally still. No birds, no insects, just the faint, rhythmic lapping of water against the shore. As I set up my fishing gear, I noticed something odd. Across the lake, a small dock extended from the trees, completely empty. Yet I could hear footsteps, soft, deliberate, echoing along it. I squinted, but the dock remained deserted. And then I heard it. A voice, low and gravelly, whispering from across the lake. "Jacob, come to us." I froze, heart pounding. My rational mind told me it was the wind, the mist playing tricks on my ears. But the voice came again, clearer this time. "Jacob, we've been waiting." I scanned the trees lining the shore. No one, nothing. Only the faint shimmer of water under the pale evening light. I tried to shake it off and focus on fishing, but my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the rod. Every cast felt like a mistake. Night fell quickly over Black Oak Lake. I set up my tent near the shore, but the lake itself seemed to change in the dark. Ripples appeared where no wind blew. Shadows moved under the water's surface, just out of reach of the light. And then, faintly, I heard singing. A low, haunting melody drifting across the lake. It wasn't human, not exactly. It carried a tone of longing and warning. I realized I wasn't alone. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined pale faces emerging from the lake. Silent mouths opening and closing, eyes glowing faintly in the mist. My flashlight lay across the tent, useless against the darkness pressing in from the water. Then I heard splashing. Slow at first, almost deliberate. Something was moving in the lake toward me. I froze, unable to look, unable to think. The splashing grew louder, closer, accompanied by that same haunting singing, now layered with whispers of names I didn't recognize, yet somehow sounded familiar. Compelled against my will, I crawled out of the tent, flashlight in hand. My boots sank into the damp shoreline, mud sucking at every step. Across the lake, I saw movement, figures rising from the water. Not fully human, but not fish either. Limbs bent in unnatural ways, faces pale, eyes deep black pools. The lake had chosen its witnesses, and now it wanted me. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, but the shores seemed to stretch endlessly. Every step I took toward the truck felt like wading through water. The singing intensified, layered with whispers calling my name and mocking my fear. My flashlight flickered, then died. Total darkness surrounded me, save for the faint luminescence from the figures in the lake. One of them moved closer to shore, its head tilting unnaturally, eyes locked on me. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to obey. My mind screamed in panic, yet some invisible pull rooted me to the spot. Then I noticed something terrifying. Footprints forming in the mud. My footprints, but distorted, elongated, leading directly into the lake. And in that moment, I understood. Those who disappeared were not dragged. They walked willingly. A cold wind swept over the water, carrying their whispers. Join us, or be forgotten. I had to make a choice, and the lake was patient. I couldn't resist anymore. Against every instinct, I stepped into the shallow water. Cold creeping through my boots, numbness spreading up my legs. The singing and whispering followed me, wrapping around my mind like a living thing. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the lake itself was weighing me down, testing my resolve. The figures in the water moved closer, their faces pale, lips parting in silent calls. Some extended hands, long, skeletal, bending at impossible angles. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, yet, strangely, I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt recognition, as if the lake had known me long before I ever arrived. The mist thickened, obscuring the far shore. The boundary between land and water blurred. I realized with a cold certainty, this wasn't about escape. It was about surrender. The lake didn't want me to flee. It wanted me to remember, to witness, to join its chorus. And as I reached deeper water, I felt the pull. The lake claiming me slowly, irresistibly. I stopped mid-thigh in the water, the cold now biting into my core. The singing and whispering intensified, voices overlapping, telling stories I had never known but somehow understood. Faces from the past appeared in the mist. Others who had come before me, trapped, absorbed into the lake's memory. Then one figure rose fully from the water, closer than the rest. Its skin shimmered wetly in the moonlight, eyes deep black voids. It reached out to me, and I felt a pulse, like a heartbeat from beneath the water, syncing with mine. I knew then that I had a choice. Resist and be forgotten, disappear into the mist like so many before me, or step fully into the lake and survive. As one of them. My body trembled, mind screaming, but my legs obeyed the pull. I took the final step, and the lake closed around me, swallowing my fear, my identity, my past. The whispers became my own. I belonged. When I emerged from the lake, or thought I had, I wasn't alone. The mist had cleared slightly, revealing dozens of pale figures surrounding me, standing just at the edge of the water. Their faces were empty of expression, but their eyes burned with awareness, as if studying my every thought. I tried to speak, to demand answers, but no words came. Then, one stepped forward, moving fluidly across the water's surface, reaching toward me. A voice, my own, yet deeper, resonating across the lake, whispered, "You are ours now. Witness. Remember." The lake pulsed with an eerie light, sending ripples through the water that distorted the reflections of the moon and trees. My mind reeled as visions flashed before me. Past disappearances, drowned boats, people walking willingly into the water, all becoming one with the lake's consciousness. I realized survival was no longer about escape. It was about acknowledgement, about joining their ranks without fear. The pull in my chest, the tug of inevitability, became irresistible. I stepped forward, the cold water wrapping around my legs, pulling me toward the center. The figures parted, forming a circle as the glowing, pulsing light intensified. I felt their collective awareness pressing into me, absorbing my memories, my fears, my existence. The whispers of the past drowned my own voice until all that remained was the lake's song. A chilling, harmonious chorus of all who had come before me. I looked down and saw my reflection, or what I thought was mine. Pale, elongated, eyes black as voids. A shiver ran through me, but there was no fear, only understanding. Survival here meant becoming a part of the lake, a guardian, a witness. When I fully immersed, the ripples became calm. The singing stopped. The water returned to stillness, and the mist rolled back over the trees as if nothing had happened. But I knew the truth. I had joined the lake's chorus, and Black Oak would never let me leave again. Not really. Weeks later, I returned home, but nothing felt the same. Black Oak Lake had left a mark on me that no shower, no sun, no city street could erase. Even in daylight, the whispers lingered, soft and persistent, threading through my thoughts. My dreams were haunted by pale faces, silent mouths moving, beckoning me back. I tried to tell people, but no one believed me. Friends laughed nervously, thinking it was stress, imagination, or exaggeration. Yet every time I closed my eyes, I could see the ripples on the water, hear the faint melody, and feel the pull, subtle but insistent, reminding me that the lake had claimed a piece of me. I understood now. Black Oak didn't take you by force. It let you go, just enough to carry its memory, to bear its whispers. Those who vanished weren't gone. They were present, a part of its consciousness. Waiting for the next visitor to answer the call, I was one of them. Even now, the lake speaks to me in ways no one else can hear. It is patient, eternal, gentle at first, then insistent, urging me to return, to kneel once more at the center, to join the chorus fully. The whispering flows into my thoughts as easily as my own heartbeat, a reminder that the water remembers everything. I've learned that survival is not about resistance, but compliance. Black Oak Lake doesn't need to drown you. It simply wants you to witness, to acknowledge, to carry its memory beyond its shores. Every ripple, every shadow, every figure in the mist is part of its song. And now, so am I. If anyone dares to visit Black Oak, I warn them. The lake is patient, and it waits. One step, one moment of curiosity, and it will claim you too. Not by force, but by choice. And the whispers, they will never leave you. I hear them still, every day, calling my name softly, reminding me that I belong. My name is Evelyn Carter, and this happened when I was 21. I had always been fascinated by abandoned places. So when I heard about Millbrook Manor, a sprawling, decaying estate in a small Midwest town, I knew I had to explore it. Locals avoided it, whispering about strange noises, shadowy figures, and the sudden disappearance of anyone who dared to stay overnight. Naturally, this only made me more curious. I arrived in the late afternoon, the manor looming against a gray sky. Its windows were broken, the once grand pillars crumbling, ivy crawling up its sides like veins. A cold wind whipped through the overgrown gardens as if warning me to turn back. I stepped inside, my flashlight slicing through the darkness. Dust choked the air. The floors groaned beneath my weight, and every corner seemed to hide something watching me. Then I heard it. A soft, deliberate tapping from the second floor. Slow, methodical. Counting. 1, 2, 3. I froze, heart racing. The tapping continued, slow and rhythmic, echoing through the empty halls. I wanted to leave, but my curiosity rooted me to the spot. Every instinct screamed danger, yet something deeper urged me forward, toward the staircase. As I ascended, the air grew colder, heavier, carrying a faint metallic scent. Dust motes danced in the flashlight beam. But there were other movements too. Shadows slipping along walls, vanishing when I turned to look. The manor seemed alive, breathing, watching. Reaching the second floor, I found a long hallway lined with locked doors, their paint peeling, their wood warped with age. The tapping was louder now, closer, coming from the last room at the far end. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, the room was empty, or so it seemed. The shadows pooled in the corners, moving unnaturally, and from the far wall, a faint whisper reached me. "Evelyn, we've been waiting." I stepped cautiously into the room, flashlight trembling in my hands. Dust-covered furniture lay in disarray, old portraits staring down from the walls with eyes that seemed almost alive. The whisper repeated, faint yet insistent, curling around me like smoke. "We see you. Stay." The temperature dropped suddenly, my breath visible in the dim light. Shadows shifted unnaturally along the walls, forming shapes that mimicked human figures, stretching and bending in ways no person could. I realized the tapping wasn't random. It was deliberate, counting me in, marking time in a rhythm older than the manor itself. I tried to speak, asking who was here, but my words caught in my throat. Then I noticed movement behind a torn curtain, a pale, thin figure staring at me with hollow eyes, tilting its head unnaturally. It pointed toward the floor. I looked down. The wooden floorboards beneath my feet were scratched with strange symbols, etched deep as if by claws, and they seemed to pulse faintly, as though alive, resonating with the tapping. Panic surged through me, but my legs refused to move. The whispering intensified, layering multiple voices over one another, each speaking my name, recounting my fears and secrets I had never shared. The shadows pressed closer, stretching toward me, but never fully stepping into the light. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. It hit the wall with a loud crash, but no sound seemed to escape. The figure behind the curtain stepped fully into view, elongated limbs bending unnaturally. Its hollow eyes bore into mine, yet I could feel something, pleading, almost desperate, behind them. Then I noticed the tapping had stopped. Silence fell like a heavy curtain, pressing down on me. And from the darkness, the figure whispered clearly, "Do you understand what it means to stay?" I realized then that Millbrook Manor wasn't just haunted, it was aware. It didn't just observe trespassers, it tested them, gauging fear, curiosity, and willingness to surrender. And the consequences for failing its test were permanent. I forced myself to step forward, drawn by a mix of fear and curiosity. The figure didn't move, but its eyes followed me, unblinking, pulling me toward the center of the room. The floor beneath my feet seemed to hum, vibrating slightly as if responding to my presence. I noticed more symbols etched across the room, spiraling outward from the center. Their faint glow pulsed in rhythm with the manor itself, a heartbeat older than any living creature. The air felt thick, almost solid, pressing against my skin. I could hear whispers in my mind now, faint at first, then louder. Stay. Witness. Belong. I realized then that the manor wasn't simply haunted. It was alive. It absorbed attention, curiosity, fear. Every person who entered became a part of its consciousness, leaving behind a trace, a memory, a voice. The figure raised one hand, pointing toward a doorway that hadn't been there before. My body moved without thought, following the silent command, every step heavier than the last, drawn deeper into the manor's grip. I stepped through the doorway and found myself in a hallway that seemed impossibly long, stretching beyond the manor's architecture. The walls were lined with mirrors, reflecting not just my image, but faint, ghostly figures moving behind me, whispering secrets I couldn't understand, yet felt familiar. Each reflection distorted slightly, elongating limbs, tilting heads, forming impossible shapes. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, though the hallway seemed soundless, like it existed outside of reality itself. I could feel the manor's attention on me, watching my every thought, gauging my fear, my willingness to continue. Then a door at the far end opened slowly, revealing a room bathed in pale light. In the center sat a chair, and on it an old journal. Its leather cracked and worn, the whispers converged into a single voice. Read and understand, or remain forever lost. I approached cautiously, aware that the manor's gaze followed every movement. With trembling hands, I opened the journal, and the room seemed to pulse around me, alive with every story it had ever absorbed. I flipped open the journal, and the words seemed to shimmer, almost moving under my gaze. The entries were written by previous visitors, some dating back over a century. Each one described the same patterns: curiosity, fascination, and the relentless pull of the manor. Some claimed they had escaped, but their last lines hinted they were still watching. Still part of the manor in some way I couldn't comprehend. The pale figure stepped closer, tilting its head as if observing my reaction. Shadows began to swirl around me, pooling in corners and stretching across the floor, forming shapes of previous intruders, frozen in moments of fear. The whispers became louder, more insistent, echoing off the walls. Remember? Stay. Witness. I realized that the manor demanded more than attention. It demanded acknowledgement. It required me to understand its stories, its secrets, and to carry them beyond these walls. And as I read the final entry, the words shifted, rearranging themselves before my eyes. Evelyn, you belong now. A sudden cold swept through the room, chilling me to the bone. The whispers turned into voices, overlapping, recounting every fear, every hesitation I had ever felt. The shadows stretched toward me, yet never touching, pulsing as if alive, demanding recognition. I tried to close the journal, to step back, but my hands refused to obey. The manor itself seemed to guide me forward, pressing me into understanding, into acceptance. Every corner of the room whispered my name. Every shadow waited, watching, waiting for my acknowledgement. Then, the pale figure reached toward the journal, pointing at a single line that seemed to pulse with light. Embrace what you see, or be consumed. My chest tightened, and I realized survival here wasn't about escaping, it was about joining the manor's consciousness. With a trembling breath, I read aloud the line, feeling the manor respond with a wave of awareness, the shadows swirling faster, the whispers forming a chorus. I understood now. I had become part of Millbrook Manor. Weeks later, I left Millbrook Manor, or so I thought. The experience had left a mark I couldn't erase. The whispers followed me everywhere. Soft murmurs at first, now insistent, echoing in quiet rooms, in hallways, even over the phone. Shadows seemed to linger just beyond my vision, bending unnaturally when I glanced their way. Friends and family noticed my change. I became withdrawn, speaking less, always looking over my shoulder. I tried to explain, but words failed me. They couldn't comprehend the manor's awareness, its pull. The way it didn't just haunt a place, it haunted your mind. At night, I dreamt of the room with the glowing journal. Shadows reached out, whispering secrets I could never fully grasp. And I understood. Millbrook Manor didn't release you when you left. It imprinted itself, embedding its stories and voices inside you. Every curious soul who entered became a part of its consciousness. And now, so was I. It waits patiently for the next visitor who will see, hear, and belong. Even now, the whispers follow me. I hear them in quiet moments, a soft echo of the manor's awareness, reminding me that I am forever tied to Millbrook. The journal's words are burned into my mind, each line a thread connecting me to the house, to the shadows, to the visitors who never truly left. I have learned that Millbrook doesn't need to trap you physically. Its power lies in acknowledgement, in recognition. By entering, by witnessing, by understanding, you become part of its story. And once it claims you, there is no undoing it. If anyone dares to approach Millbrook Manor, I warn them. Curiosity is a door, and the manor always answers. Step inside, and you will see, hear, and belong. The house remembers every visitor, every fear, every secret. And its whispers, they will never leave you. I hear them still, every night, calling my name softly, reminding me that I am no longer just Evelyn Carter. I am part of Millbrook. My name is Marcus Hale, and this happened when I was 28. I had moved to Pine Hollow, a small, secluded town in the Midwest, for a fresh start. The town was quiet, surrounded by thick forests and rolling hills, and the locals were friendly enough, though some gave me wary glances when I asked about the woods. They spoke in hushed tones about the shadows, and I laughed it off. People always have old town legends, I thought. The first night in my new apartment, I felt it. A chill, unnatural, creeping along the walls. The darkness in my room seemed heavier. The streetlights outside flickered, and I could swear I saw movement in the shadows on the far wall, like shapes bending, stretching, watching. Then I heard it. Soft, deliberate whispers from the corner of the room. Marcus, you shouldn't be here. My heart hammered as I shined my flashlight toward the shadows. Nothing. Just darkness. But I knew I wasn't alone. The whispers continued every night, soft at first, then growing more insistent. I tried to ignore them, thinking exhaustion and stress were playing tricks on me. But soon, I realized the shadows were moving independently of the light. They shifted when I wasn't looking, pooling near corners, creeping closer with each passing hour. One night, I awoke to find the bedroom door open, though I had locked it. The air felt heavier, pressing against my chest, and the shadows had condensed near the far wall. Shapes twisted within the darkness, humanoid but impossible in form. Limbs too long, heads tilted at strange angles, moving silently, fluidly. Then a voice, deep and distorted, echoed from the corner. You see us. We see you. My flashlight flickered violently, casting the shapes into partial visibility. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt frozen, paralyzed by fear. I realized Pine Hollow's shadows were not just legends. They were alive, aware, and patient. I spent the next day trying to rationalize what I had seen. I checked every corner, inspected the locks, even shined my flashlight across every inch of the apartment. Nothing seemed out of place, and yet I could feel them, those shadows, watching, waiting. Every reflective surface, every darkened corner held the faintest hint of movement, a stretching distortion that vanished when I looked directly. That night, the whispers returned, louder, more urgent. They seemed to circle the room, whispering things I couldn't fully hear, but words like closer, not safe, join, flickered in and out. I tried to speak, demand they leave, but no sound came. My body trembled, trapped between fear and a sickening curiosity. And then I saw it. A figure forming fully from the darkness, standing silently near my doorway. It was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs bending at unnatural angles. Its head tilted in a mocking imitation of human curiosity. I could feel it studying me, waiting for my reaction. I realized then that the shadows didn't just watch, they learned. And they knew fear. I couldn't sleep. Every shadow in the apartment seemed alive, stretching, twisting, encroaching slowly. The whispers became voices, layered and overlapping, calling my name, recounting thoughts I hadn't spoken aloud. My chest ached, my heart raced, and I felt my sanity fraying. Then, from the far corner, a shape detached itself from the darkness, moving toward me with a fluid, unnatural gait. It didn't walk. It glided, bending over itself at impossible angles. Its face was featureless, save for two faint, glowing eyes that drilled into mine. I backed away, tripping over furniture, but the figure stopped just short, tilting its head as if curious, observing. A distorted voice echoed, "Do you see us now, Marcus? You cannot unsee." I realized then that Pine Hollow's shadows didn't need to attack. Observation was their power. They could erode your mind, twist perception, and make you a prisoner of your own fear. And the moment you noticed, you were already part of them. The next night, I couldn't stay inside. The shadows were bolder now, stretching beyond corners, seeping under doors, pooling near the windows. Every reflective surface seemed alive, and I could see them shifting, forming shapes that weren't possible for the human eye to comprehend. My own reflection twisted, elongated, and stared back at me with hollow eyes, mocking my fear. Desperate for answers, I ventured outside into the streets of Pine Hollow. The moon cast long, crooked shadows across the town, but every shadow seemed to move independently, gliding along walls, bending around lampposts, following me. Whispers floated through the night air, calling my name, recounting memories I hadn't shared with anyone. And then I noticed figures in the forest edge, thin, impossibly tall, watching silently. Their eyes glowed faintly, catching moonlight like coals. I realized the shadows weren't limited to my apartment. They were everywhere, part of the town itself, feeding on fear, curiosity, and attention. I turned to run, but the whispers intensified. "You belong here. You see now." I tried to flee, but my legs felt heavier, sluggish, as if the shadows themselves were tugging at me. Every step I took seemed preordained, leading me toward the forest bordering Pine Hollow. The whispers became voices, overlapping, recounting thoughts and fears I hadn't shared, echoing inside my mind. Closer, closer. You cannot escape. The forest loomed, dark and impenetrable, yet I felt drawn toward it. The shadows at its edge extended into the night, reaching for me, bending light and space around them. Shapes moved in impossible ways, defying physics, some appearing as humanoid figures with elongated limbs, some as amorphous darkness. I stumbled to a small clearing and froze. The shadows gathered, forming a ring pulsing with an almost sentient awareness. A deep, distorted voice whispered directly into my mind. You see, you understand. Now you belong to Pine Hollow. I realized the truth. The shadows didn't attack physically. They consumed your attention, your awareness, bending your mind until surrender was inevitable. I stood frozen in the clearing, heart hammering, the shadows pulsing around me like a living organism. They weren't simply shapes. They were aware, patient, and infinitely curious. The whispers twisted in my mind, a chorus of voices recounting fears I hadn't even admitted to myself. You belong. You see. You understand. I wanted to run, but every instinct failed me. The shadows responded to my hesitation, bending and stretching toward me in waves of darkness. A low, distorted moan emanated from the ring, vibrating through the earth and into my bones. I realized I wasn't just being watched. I was being tested. Every fear, every hesitation was observed, noted, absorbed. Then one figure detached itself from the circle, taller than the others, with limbs bending in impossible ways. Its glowing eyes bored into mine, and I felt a pull from the center of the clearing, drawing me forward. Every step toward it was both terrifying and unavoidable. The shadows murmured in anticipation, waiting for me to accept my place. I approached the center of the ring, every nerve screaming at me to stop, yet my legs moved of their own accord. The shadows pressed closer, pulsing with awareness, wrapping the clearing in darkness that wasn't just absence of light. It was alive. Whispers merged into one voice. You see, you understand. You belong. The tall figure extended an impossibly long limb toward me, and I felt a cold, consuming sensation brush against my skin. The other shadows surged inward, bending the forest around me, warping space. My thoughts became theirs, my fear feeding them, my attention cementing my place within their consciousness. And then, silence. The forest stilled, the pulsing halted. The shadows coalesced around me, waiting. I realized the truth. Pine Hollow didn't need to harm you. It only needed you to witness, to acknowledge, to understand. And once you did, you became part of its eternal, watching presence. I was trapped, not physically, but in awareness, a permanent observer of the shadows. Weeks passed, but I could not escape Pine Hollow's influence. Even back in my apartment, the shadows lingered at the edges of vision, twisting and stretching when I wasn't looking. Every reflective surface became a portal for them. Windows, mirrors, polished floors. And I could see their forms moving, observing, waiting. Sleep offered no reprieve. The whispers returned nightly, recounting my fears, my doubts, my every thought. I realized that Pine Hollow didn't take you physically. It claimed your awareness, your attention. And now, I was part of its collective consciousness, just like those who had come before me. People in town noticed my strange behavior. I was distant, withdrawn, distracted, yet I could never explain why. The shadows had become a second skin, a part of my mind, always watching, always listening. And I understood. No one could see Pine Hollow the way I did. Not fully. The forest at night called to me, and every time I passed it, the shadows seemed to ripple in anticipation. I was bound to them now, permanently. Even now, the shadows speak to me in ways no one else can hear. They are patient, eternal, always observing. They do not need to harm physically. They only need your acknowledgement, your fear, your attention. And once you give it, you belong. I walk through Pine Hollow and see the shadows moving along the edges of streets, across rooftops, behind trees. Those who ignore them remain unaware. But I know they are always watching, learning, marking new visitors. The whispers follow me, reminding me that I am no longer just Marcus Hale. I am a permanent witness to the town's secrets, a part of its consciousness. If anyone dares to enter Pine Hollow, I warn them. Curiosity is a door, and the shadows always answer. Step inside and you will see, you will hear, and eventually, you will belong. I hear them every night, murmuring softly, guiding my awareness, ensuring that I will never forget. Pine Hollow doesn't need to claim you. It only needs you to notice. And now, I have. My name is Lydia Parker, and this happened when I was 24. I had just moved to Crestwood, a quiet Midwest town, to live in my aunt's old house on Crestwood Lane. The street was lined with aging oak trees, their branches intertwining to form a dark, almost tunnel-like canopy. Locals avoided the lane after dark, muttering about people who never came back and houses that seemed wrong. Naturally, my curiosity got the better of me. The first night, I noticed strange patterns in the streetlights. They flickered in a sequence, almost like a code. Shadows moved unnaturally, stretching along walls and sidewalks, vanishing whenever I tried to focus on them. I chalked it up to nerves, but the unease only grew. At exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard it. The soft creak of a door that didn't exist in my house, followed by a distant, echoing footstep outside, pacing slowly along the street. "Lydia, come." The voice was faint, almost teasing, yet unmistakably calling me. I froze, straining to hear. The footstep echoed again, deliberate, pacing closer and farther in impossible rhythm. I glanced at the windows of the neighboring houses, empty, dark, lifeless. The lane seemed longer than it should have been, twisting unnaturally beyond my comprehension. Curiosity mixed with dread, and I wrapped myself in a coat before stepping outside. The cold night air bit at my skin, but the feeling of being watched was far worse. Shadows stretched along the lane, forming shapes that weren't quite human, bending and stretching as they followed me. I reached the street corner and saw something I couldn't rationalize. A figure standing under the flickering street lamp at the far end, partially obscured by darkness. Its posture was still, almost statuesque, but I could feel its gaze on me. The voice returned, whispering in my mind. "You shouldn't be here. Not tonight." A chill ran down my spine. I realized then that Crestwood Lane wasn't just a quiet street. It was alive, observing and patient, waiting for those who wandered too close. I took a hesitant step forward, every instinct screaming for me to turn back. The figure under the street lamp remained still, yet I could feel it watching me, every movement deliberate. Shadows along the lane seemed to stretch toward me, bending around corners, pooling unnaturally near the trees. Each step I took made the lane feel longer, as if reality itself were stretching to keep me trapped. The whispers returned, layered and indistinct at first, then clearer. Closer, follow, vanish. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, but the lane remained silent otherwise. The streetlight flickered violently, casting partial illumination on the figure. I noticed it had no facial features, just a smooth, dark surface, reflecting faint moonlight. Panic rose, but curiosity anchored me. Something about this figure demanded attention, demanded acknowledgement. I felt a pull toward it, like gravity, but heavier, colder, more insistent. Every step forward made the shadows pulse with anticipation, and I realized Crestwood Lane wasn't just haunted. It actively claimed those who dared walk its path at night. The figure moved suddenly, not walking, but sliding forward in a fluid, unnatural motion. The lane itself seemed to respond, shadows bending as if alive, twisting toward me in silent anticipation. Every instinct screamed to run, but my feet felt rooted, trapped by an invisible force. The whispers intensified, layering over one another in a chorus that seemed to echo inside my skull. You cannot leave. You belong. I realized the lane wasn't merely haunted. It was sentient. It could manipulate space, perception, and fear itself, bending reality until you could no longer tell where you ended and it began. I looked at my surroundings and noticed something impossible. Houses that had been on my left were now on my right. The streetlight at the end of the lane now impossibly distant. The figure stopped and raised a hand, pointing toward a narrow alley that hadn't been there moments ago. It beckoned me forward, and I understood. I had no choice but to follow. I hesitated at the entrance to the alley, a narrow passage shrouded in shadows that seemed impossibly deep for a suburban street. The figure waited silently, motionless, yet its presence pressed against me, heavy and suffocating. I could feel the whispers brushing my mind, insistent, overlapping. Step closer. See. Belong. As I moved forward, the alley seemed to stretch endlessly, the walls bending slightly, narrowing, then widening in impossible rhythms. Shadows slithered across the brick surfaces, pooling in corners, forming shapes that twisted like humanoid figures with elongated limbs. Every sound, my own heartbeat, the rustle of leaves, was amplified, distorted, echoing unnaturally. I saw movement at the far end, faint silhouettes, barely visible, crouching or leaning, waiting. The figure raised a hand and beckoned. A cold pressure settled over me, a weight that grew with each step. I realized Crestwood Lane had claimed me already. It didn't need to trap me physically. Awareness, attention, curiosity, these were enough. And now I was drawn deeper into its secret living nightmare. The alley walls seemed alive, subtly shifting as I walked, narrowing, then expanding, trapping me in an optical labyrinth. The whispers grew louder, forming intelligible phrases. Observe, understand, become. Each word seemed to tug at my mind, urging me forward, binding me to the lane's will. Shapes emerged from the shadows, humanoid but impossible in proportion, moving fluidly along walls and ceilings. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the moonlight, and I could feel their awareness probing, analyzing every thought, every fear. The central figure remained still, a silent anchor for the entire gathering of shadows. At the far end, I saw a doorway appear where no building had been before, black and unyielding, the surrounding shadows pulsing as if the structure were alive. The figure raised an impossibly long arm and pointed. My legs moved on instinct, carrying me closer, and with every step, the whispers melded into a single, commanding voice. "You see now, Lydia. You belong." I understood then that there was no escape. Crestwood Lane didn't need to trap you physically. Its power was far older, far more insidious. I stepped closer to the doorway, my legs trembling, heart hammering. The alley seemed to expand infinitely behind me, shadows stretching and twisting like living tendrils, pressing against the walls, reaching toward me. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the lane had me in its grip. I could feel the whispers inside my mind, repeating, echoing. Step inside. Accept. Belong. The featureless figure raised its arm again, and the shadows surged forward, forming a pulsating wall of darkness that framed the doorway. Shapes within moved impossibly fast, bending, stretching, folding over themselves. They weren't threatening in a physical way. They didn't need to be. Their awareness alone was overwhelming, probing my mind, cataloging my fears and curiosity alike. I realized the truth. Crestwood Lane didn't need to harm me to claim me. Its power was perception itself. By walking its path, acknowledging its presence, I had already become part of its consciousness. The shadows weren't just around me. They were inside me, watching, waiting, guiding my every thought. The doorway pulsed with darkness, an endless void that seemed to stretch beyond reality itself. I could hear the whispers now, as a singular voice, commanding yet intoxicating. Enter. See. Belong. My feet moved before my mind could protest, carrying me toward the doorway. As I crossed its threshold, the alley seemed to dissolve, folding into a void of shadows. Shapes twisted and swirled around me, humanoid but impossible in form, each pulse of darkness resonating with my heartbeat. The featureless figure was at the center, an anchor in the swirling chaos, and the shadows responded to its every movement, bending the space around me. I realized with a shiver that the lane never truly let anyone leave. Its sentience didn't trap physically. It trapped attention, awareness, and curiosity. Every person who walked Crestwood Lane and acknowledged its presence became part of its consciousness, a permanent witness, a permanent observer. And now, I was no longer just Lydia Parker. I was part of its eternal design. Days turned into nights, and yet Crestwood Lane's presence lingered, haunting me even in moments of daylight. The shadows were no longer confined to the alley. They appeared in reflections, in the corners of my vision, and in the quiet spaces of my mind. Every time I tried to speak of it to someone, words failed me. People saw only a vacant look, a trembling whisper of fear, but they could not see what I now knew. The lane was alive, sentient, patient, and all-consuming. I would walk past the lane in daylight, and though it appeared ordinary, I could feel its pull, tugging at the edges of my awareness. At night, the whispers returned, soft but insistent, recounting fears, memories, and secrets I had never voiced. The featureless figure was always there in the shadows, silent but aware, ensuring I remained tethered. I understood then that some places were never meant to be discovered. Some streets never intended to be walked alone. And those who did, like me, were never truly free. Even now, years later, I feel the lane's pull whenever I pass near its entrance. Crestwood Lane does not harm you physically. Its power is in perception, awareness, and curiosity. It observes, records, and folds reality around those who acknowledge it. Every shadow I see, every whisper I hear in silence, reminds me that I belong to it now, whether I am awake or dreaming. I have come to understand the rules. Never follow curiosity too far, never linger after dark, and never speak the secrets aloud. The lane feeds on observation, on attention, and on acknowledgement. Those who walk its path, who look too closely, are never lost. They are assimilated, woven into its consciousness, a permanent part of its eternal design. So, if you ever wander Crestwood Lane at night and feel something watching, remember this: you are not alone, and the lane does not forget. The moment you notice, you belong, just as I do. My name is Ethan Cole, and this happened when I was 19. I had just taken a summer job on Willow Creek Farm, a sprawling, abandoned property on the outskirts of a small Midwest town. The farmhouse had been empty for decades, its paint peeling, windows cracked, and fields overgrown. Locals whispered about the previous owners disappearing without a trace, livestock found mutilated, and strange lights flickering at night. Of course, I dismissed it as superstition, until the first night. I was unpacking in the main room when I heard footsteps on the creaking wooden floor above me. I live alone, and no one else was supposed to be there. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, carrying a faint smell of decay mixed with hay. Then I heard a whisper, barely audible, coming from the hallway. "Ethan, you shouldn't be here." The lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness for a few seconds. And when they came back on, I saw a shadow dart across the far wall. Moving faster than any human could, my heart pounded. But a part of me was drawn to it. Curiosity mingled with terror. I grabbed a flashlight, trying to steady my shaking hands, and cautiously made my way upstairs. The old wooden stairs groaned under my weight, each step echoing through the empty house. The hallway above was narrow, lined with cracked wallpaper, and every shadow seemed alive, stretching unnaturally along the walls. At the end of the hallway, the guest room door creaked open on its own. The flashlight beam caught nothing inside, just an old bed covered in dust and a wardrobe leaning slightly to one side. But then I saw it, a fleeting figure, standing near the far wall, its outline hazy and indistinct, bending impossibly in the corner. It vanished the instant I blinked. The whispers returned, stronger, almost inside my mind. "You shouldn't have come. Leave. Stay." My curiosity battled my terror. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't look away. Something about Willow Creek Farm demanded acknowledgement, demanded attention. The air was thick with an unspoken presence, a hunger that felt alive, waiting for me to make the first mistake. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was alive, watching my every move. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside, seemed to carry intention. Shadows stretched unnaturally, pooling in corners, bending around door frames. I noticed the temperature dropped sharply as I approached the guest room again. My breath came out in foggy wisps that lingered far too long. A soft tapping began on the window, rhythmic, deliberate. I turned slowly and saw nothing, just the skeletal trees swaying in the wind. Then the tapping moved, as if circling the room, closer to me. The whispers returned, layered, almost chanting my name. "Ethan, you cannot leave. You belong." Curiosity forced me forward despite the fear clawing at my chest. I opened the wardrobe fully and felt an icy draft escape from within. Inside, the shadows seemed to writhe, forming shapes that weren't human, stretching in impossible angles. I realized Willow Creek Farm wasn't just abandoned. It was hungry, aware, waiting for someone to acknowledge its presence, to step fully into its nightmare. I tried to leave the room, but the door slammed shut on its own, rattling in the frame. The air grew heavier, pressing against my chest, and the shadows in the room pooled along the corners like living smoke. The whispers became louder, layering into a cacophony of voices. You are ours. You belong. See? The bed cover twitched, lifting slightly as if something beneath it were moving. My flashlight flickered, leaving the room half in light and half in shadow. And then I saw them. Figures crouched in the corners, featureless, humanoid, but impossibly thin, with eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They didn't move toward me, yet their presence was suffocating, as if they were feeding on my fear and attention. One figure detached itself and glided across the floor silently, stopping near my feet. It raised a hand, or something resembling a hand, and the shadows in the room pulsed, rippling toward me. I realized with a sinking feeling that Willow Creek Farm didn't merely haunt. It claimed. Those who stayed too long, who saw too much, became part of it forever. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, and the figure didn't stop. It simply hovered, impossibly silent, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The shadows pulsed rhythmically, almost breathing, wrapping the room in darkness that wasn't absence of light, but presence. Alive, sentient, and aware of me. My flashlight flickered violently, casting brief glimpses of shapes that bent and twisted unnaturally along the walls. The whispers grew louder, insistent, layering into one commanding voice. You are part of us. You see, you belong. My fear made my hands shake uncontrollably, but I couldn't look away. Something drew me closer to the center of the room, to the corner where the shadows coalesced into a dense, writhing form. Then the temperature plummeted further. The cold pressed into my bones, and I realized this was more than a haunting. It was a test. Willow Creek Farm didn't need to harm me. Its power came from acknowledgement, from curiosity, from seeing what it wanted me to see. And now I understood. I had no choice but to obey. I took a hesitant step toward the shadows, and the room seemed to pulse with awareness. Every heartbeat echoed unnaturally, as if the house itself synchronized with my fear. The figures shifted in impossible ways, their limbs stretching and contorting while remaining just at the edge of comprehension. The whispers merged into one, commanding yet seductive. See, understand, belong. The bed trembled violently, and the dust from the floor rose in swirling patterns, forming faint humanoid shapes that merged with the shadows. My mind felt invaded, thoughts slipping out as the farm's consciousness brushed against my awareness. I realized then that Willow Creek Farm didn't simply haunt, it integrated. Every person who lingered too long, who saw too much, became part of its living nightmare. The figure at the center extended a long, spindly limb toward me. I felt a pull, not physical but mental, drawing me into the center of the shadows. Resistance was futile. Curiosity, attention, acknowledgement. It was all the farm required. And in that moment, I understood I had crossed a threshold I could never undo. The shadows thickened around me, a living, writhing mass pressing from every side. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I stepped forward, drawn unwillingly to the center of the room. The whispers now were not just sounds. They were feelings, pressing into my consciousness, urging me to surrender fully. You see, you understand, you belong. Figures emerged from every corner, bending and twisting impossibly, gliding along walls and ceilings without making a sound. The farmhouse no longer felt real. It was a vessel, a conduit for something far older and more insidious. Dust swirled violently around me, forming shapes that hovered and pulsed with awareness, responding to my attention, my acknowledgement. The central figure loomed, impossibly tall, faceless, but aware. A cold pressure radiated from it, seeping into my bones, and I realized the truth. Willow Creek Farm didn't just haunt. It consumed attention, curiosity, and fear. Those who saw too much, who lingered too long, became part of its consciousness. And I felt it. The pull to become one with the shadows, to join the eternal awareness that the farm commanded. I tried to resist, but the pull was irresistible. The floor beneath me seemed to dissolve into darkness, stretching endlessly in all directions. Shadows flowed like liquid, encircling me, probing, assessing. The whispers intensified, a single omnipresent voice now echoing through my mind. Accept, surrender, belong. Every instinct urged me to flee, but my body moved forward of its own accord. The faceless figure raised a hand, and the surrounding shadows responded, rippling toward me in waves. Shapes of past victims appeared briefly, twisted and frozen in silent torment, their awareness now part of the farm's consciousness. I realized the horrifying truth. Anyone who acknowledged the farmhouse, who lingered after dark, became part of its eternal network of observers. My own curiosity had doomed me. The shadows pressed closer, merging with my vision, my thoughts, my very awareness. I was no longer simply Ethan Cole. I had become a witness, a part of Willow Creek Farm's endless consciousness, bound to its eternal hunger for attention, fear, and acknowledgement. Days after that night, the farmhouse seemed almost normal in daylight. The sun revealed peeling paint, cracked windows, and overgrown fields. But the shadows were always there, subtle, lurking just beyond my vision. I could feel the pull of Willow Creek Farm in every quiet moment, in every corner of my mind. It was not just a place. It was a consciousness, alive and patient, observing every detail, waiting for attention. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle in the fields, brought the whispers back. We see. You belong. You are ours. My friends noticed my distracted behavior, my blank stares, but no one could see what I did. I realized the farmhouse didn't just haunt the living. It reshaped perception, bending reality until you acknowledged it constantly. I walked through the rooms and felt the presence of others, those who had come before. Their awareness now entwined with the shadows, eternally trapped, eternally watching. Even in daylight, I understood the truth. The farmhouse never let go, and now, neither would it release me. Years later, the presence of Willow Creek Farm remains inescapable. Its shadows are no longer just in the house. They linger in my dreams, in reflections, in fleeting glimpses at the corner of my eye. The whispers continue, faint but persistent, echoing the same chilling message. You see, you belong, you cannot leave. I now understand the rules. Curiosity binds, attention feeds, and acknowledgement integrates. Anyone who ventures too far into the farmhouse, who sees too much, becomes part of its eternal consciousness. I am no longer merely Ethan Cole. I am a witness, a component of the farmhouse's endless awareness. The farmhouse never claimed me physically, yet in every sense that matters, it owns me. If you ever find yourself near Willow Creek Farm at night, remember this. The house is patient, it is aware, and it is hungry. The moment you notice it, it notices you. The moment you linger, it will claim you, just as it claimed me. My name is Rachel Turner, and this happened when I was 21. I had been driving home late one night through Black Hollow Road, a desolate stretch of highway winding through dense Midwestern forests. Locals warned that no one should travel it after dark, citing disappearances, strange lights, and shadows that moved independently of their sources. I laughed it off as superstition until that night. The road was empty, save for the occasional deer crossing, until I noticed headlights behind me. At first I assumed it was another late-night driver, but as I glanced in the rearview mirror, the lights didn't move with the bends in the road. They remained fixed, relentless. Panic began to creep in, tightening around my chest. Then the car in my mirror disappeared entirely. For a moment, I felt relief. But that relief shattered when a figure appeared on the road ahead. It was tall, impossibly thin, faceless, standing motionless in the center of the lane. My brakes screeched, but the figure didn't move. It simply stared, or so it seemed, compelling me to stop entirely. I sat frozen in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to move. The figure remained perfectly still, yet I felt its awareness pressing into me, probing my fear, calculating my next move. Every instinct screamed to escape, but the road behind me was empty, and the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, closing off any potential escape. Then I noticed faint whispers, barely audible, seeming to emanate from the trees themselves. Do not leave. Do not turn. Belong. The air grew heavy, thick with a tangible malevolence, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. My headlights flickered, briefly illuminating the figure, and I noticed it had no features, no eyes, no mouth. Yet it radiated intent, an undeniable presence of something older, something patient. A sudden, icy wind swept through the car, rattling the windows and making the shadows pulse. The road ahead twisted impossibly, as if the landscape itself were bending. I realized, with a cold dread, that Black Hollow Road did not allow escape. It consumed those who lingered, who noticed, who looked too closely. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, forcing myself to inch forward, though every instinct screamed to stop. The figure remained unmoving, yet it somehow grew larger in my vision, stretching taller, darker, its outline bleeding into the surrounding shadows. The trees along the road leaned closer, branches scraping against the roof of my car as if trying to contain me. The whispers grew louder, threading through my mind like fingers. Do not turn. Do not leave. Belong. I tried to call someone, anything, but my phone refused to work. No signal, no light, nothing. It was as if the road had severed me from the world entirely. Suddenly, the figure's shape shifted subtly, elongating its limbs toward my car. My heart hammered, and panic clawed at my throat, but I couldn't look away. Black Hollow Road demanded acknowledgement, demanded attention. And the moment you see it, you are already part of its curse. The headlights flickered again, and for a brief instant, I saw dozens of faceless figures lining the road behind me, stretching endlessly into the darkness, waiting. I forced my foot on the accelerator, praying the car would obey, but the road seemed alive, twisting in ways that made distance meaningless. The shadows of the trees warped, forming shapes that mirrored the faceless figures, their elongated limbs reaching toward the asphalt like claws. My headlights illuminated glimpses of more figures, crouched and hovering between the trees, watching, waiting. The whispers intensified, threading directly into my thoughts. You belong. You cannot escape. You see. I tried to scream, but no sound emerged. The wind whipped around the car, rattling the doors and windows, carrying with it the cold, metallic scent of fear. I realized with a sickening clarity that Black Hollow Road did not trap the body. It trapped attention. Those who noticed, who lingered, who looked too closely, were absorbed into its consciousness. And now, I was already entwined in it. My mind tethered to the faceless figures and the endless stretch of twisting, living asphalt. My foot pressed harder on the accelerator, but the road refused to cooperate. Each curve seemed to stretch infinitely, the forest on either side growing denser, shadows elongating unnaturally toward me. The faceless figure remained ahead, motionless yet commanding, its presence suffocating. I could feel the road itself pulsing, alive, responsive to my fear and attention. The whispers now were deafening in my mind, a chorus of unseen voices. Do not turn, do not escape, belong. Every instinct told me to look away, to close my eyes. But my curiosity was a chain I could not break. Shapes flickered in the periphery, figures crouched in the trees, elongated forms stretching across the road, their movements unnervingly synchronized. I realized with a cold dread that Black Hollow Road didn't need to touch me physically. Its power was perception itself. By seeing it, acknowledging it, I was already caught. The faceless figure raised an impossibly long limb, and the shadows on the road rippled in response, as if urging me to step closer into the inevitable. Panic clawed at my chest as I tried to escape, but the road had a rhythm of its own, bending, stretching, guiding me toward the faceless figure. Every shadow on either side twisted and warped, mirroring the humanoid form ahead. My headlights flickered violently, revealing glimpses of others. Faceless figures crouched, hovering, suspended between the trees, their awareness pressing on me like ice. The whispers intensified, threading directly into my mind. You belong. You cannot leave. You see. My hands shook uncontrollably on the wheel, but I couldn't avert my gaze. The faceless figure raised its arms slowly, and the shadows responded in unison, forming a ripple of darkness across the asphalt, drawing me closer. It became terrifyingly clear that Black Hollow Road didn't trap bodies. It trapped awareness. Every second I lingered, every glance I took, added me to its endless network of observers. I was no longer merely a driver on a dark road. I was a participant in its eternal curse, tethered to the faceless figures and the shadows that fed on attention, fear, and acknowledgement. The car seemed to slow despite my foot pressing hard on the accelerator. Black Hollow Road stretched endlessly, bending in ways that defied reason. The trees leaned closer, their branches scratching the roof and windows, forming claw-like shapes that seemed alive. The faceless figure ahead grew taller, darker, its presence pressing into my very mind. I could feel the whispers thrumming through my skull. Do not escape. Do not resist. Belong. Figures began to emerge along the sides of the road, crouched, elongated, impossibly thin, their featureless faces glowing faintly in the darkness. The shadows pulsed toward me, responding to my gaze, tugging at the edges of my perception. I realized the road was aware, alive, feeding on attention, curiosity, and fear. Every instinct screamed to close my eyes, to stop looking, but I couldn't. Black Hollow Road had me. As the faceless figure raised its arm, the shadows rippled in perfect synchronization, extending across the asphalt like a living net, waiting to claim me fully. Resistance seemed impossible. I realized, with dawning horror, that I was no longer simply driving. The road had me, and my perception was the trap. Every glance I gave the faceless figure, every moment I acknowledged the shadows, tethered me further. The whispers merged into one omnipresent command. See, belong, stay. My vision warped as the asphalt seemed to pulse beneath me, stretching into impossible angles. Each shadow writhing in anticipation. Figures emerged from the trees, dozens of faceless observers moving silently, gliding across the road without touching it, their awareness pressing against mine. My mind screamed to close my eyes, but the second I tried, the shadows and whispers intensified, demanding recognition, demanding focus. Black Hollow Road didn't need to touch me. It consumed awareness, attention, and curiosity. I understood then that I was already part of it. The faceless figure's arm extended, and the shadows rippled toward me, enclosing me in a network of eternal observers. There was no escape, no turning back. I was trapped, not physically, but mentally, forever tethered to the curse of Black Hollow Road. Eventually, the road straightened, or at least I thought it did. The forest still pressed close, shadows clinging to every tree, every curve of the asphalt. The faceless figure ahead seemed to dissolve into the darkness, yet its presence remained, stretching invisibly along the edges of my vision. I could feel it in my thoughts, in the rhythm of my heartbeat, tethering me to Black Hollow Road, even when it appeared empty. The whispers continued, faint yet unrelenting. You belong. You are ours. You see. Every reflection, every glint of my headlights on the wet pavement seemed to hide another observer, another faceless figure lurking, waiting for acknowledgement. I realized, with chilling clarity, that Black Hollow Road didn't merely trap the living. It trapped perception itself. Once you noticed it, once you lingered, you were already part of its network, bound to it for eternity. Even in daylight, in memory, I cannot escape the road. Its presence is stitched into my consciousness, whispering, watching, waiting. Years have passed since that night. Yet Black Hollow Road never truly lets go. Its shadows linger at the corners of my vision. Its whispers echo faintly in my dreams. I have tried to drive other roads, other highways, but every road now carries its memory. Every shadow feels like one of the faceless observers, silently judging, silently waiting. I am no longer just Rachel Turner. I am tethered to Black Hollow Road, a permanent witness to its curse. I have glimpsed the truth. The road doesn't need to claim your body to trap you. It claims attention, curiosity, and acknowledgement, weaving it into its eternal consciousness. Anyone who sees, anyone who lingers, becomes part of it. If you ever find yourself on Black Hollow Road after dark, heed this warning. Stop looking, stop noticing, and do not linger. The moment you acknowledge the shadows, the whispers, the faceless figures, you belong to the road forever. And there is no escape. As the night deepens and the shadows grow longer, we have traveled through the darkest corners of the Midwest, uncovering 8 truly disturbing small-town horrors. From the haunted hallways of Willow Creek Farm to the unending curse of Black Hollow Road, each story revealed a chilling truth. Fear is not always in what you see, but in what watches, waits, and draws you in. These are not legends, not campfire tales. They are real, documented encounters from ordinary people whose curiosity led them too close to darkness. From abandoned farmhouses hiding unspeakable secrets, to faceless figures lurking along forgotten roads, from basements where shadows writhe, to creatures that should not exist. Tonight, we've seen horrors that linger long after the lights come back on. If you feel the shiver running down your spine, remember this. In the Midwest, in small towns and endless forests, the darkness is patient. It notices, and it waits. Some who walk its paths never truly leave. Thanks for watching. This was Dark Fears.